Hi everybody and welcome back to another Legends of Runeterra video. So we just barely were revealed the newest champion to Legends of Runeterra. This is going to be Tahm Kench, and this doesn't really come as a surprise to any of us. We pretty much knew that this was going to be happening. But yeah, there are a couple of surprising things with this, and let's get right into this. So let's look at Tahm Kench, a champion, a 4-drop, 2/6 stat line. So he's got pretty decent health here. Attack's okay. He can't block into fearsome units, so that's something to take note of. He is a 4-drop, so yeah, defending into fearsome units might be kind of difficult, but we'll see. He does have a way to gain stats, so let's see how we do that. Alright, so Tahm Kench. Round start, create an acquired taste in hand. So here's an acquired taste over here. It's a 2-drop slow speed spell. Tahm Kench swallows an enemy unit. It strikes him, and then he captures it. Alright, so that explains why Tahm Kench has a very large health stat, because the unit that he captures is going to be striking him before he captures it. And so, yeah, in the video it shows him capturing a Braum, who of course has 0 attack, so we don't really get to see the interaction. So I don't know if that's the best unit to have shown in the video. But yeah, it looks like you do have to be a little bit careful, because there is some interaction that can happen with this. So yeah, if you are going against Demacius in your combat, if the enemy that you are taking in has over 3 health or 3 attack, then they could use another 3 attack unit to take out Tahm Kench. Yeah, just kind of interesting. So you're going to be wanting to use this on lower statted units, and then possibly trying to keep those smaller units on the enemy side of the board alive long enough to play Tahm Kench and then put him out. Otherwise, you're going to have to be pairing him with Demacia or with the I guess healing options like we thought about, and then also Freljord could be a possibility as well, where we can buff up Tahm Kench and make it so that it's harder for him to die. So that kind of aspect of Tahm Kench now makes a little bit more sense, where he does match up well with kind of like the healing options and possibly the Soraka style deck, and then also that's why his followers are all going to be self-damaging units. But yeah, Tahm Kench himself as an ability does not damage himself. The acquired taste does upon capturing an enemy. Alright, so kind of interesting. Let's see, in order to level up Tahm Kench, you have to capture 3+ units. When I level up, obliterate my captured enemies and release my allies. So that's pretty cool. Yeah, so I mean, they're not gone indefinitely, the enemies, for sure, because if Tahm Kench gets taken out, then all the enemies are going to come out as well, right? This is just going to look like a detain, which could be very, very bad for you, because that could single-handedly release a ton of units onto the enemy side of the board if they have a way to take out Tahm Kench. So this actually seems kind of like a polarizing champion to me, if I'm being honest, because either it works or it doesn't. So you're going to have to use a lot of spells to make sure Tahm Kench stays alive, or on the other hand, what you can do is mainly focus on swallowing your allies, which was kind of shown in the video as well. So we have Tahm Kench's Bayou Brunch. An ally captures another ally and gains the captured ally's stats. Shuffle a Tahm Kench into your deck. Okay, that's the Tahm Kench's Bayou. So this is his signature spell, which is important. So he creates Acquired Taste at the round start, which only works on enemies. And then you're going to be able to put this Bayou Brunch as a full set in your deck as a playable card, and then also any that you draw with Tahm Kench. And this can be used on allies, and you gain their stats, which is pretty cool. Yeah, so you get stronger stats, so it's both attack and health, which is good to know. It is a slow speed spell, so it is interactable. But the good thing about this is that you gain their stats, for one, and two, if they do manage to kill Tahm Kench, it releases your units onto the board, which is kind of the opposite effect of Acquired Taste, that maybe they won't want to kill the Tahm Kench because they don't want your board full of your units again. So I don't know, it'd be kind of like an interesting play style. It'd be much easier, and they want to make it much easier for you to eat or swallow the enemies just because you're creating an acquired taste every round. But it almost seems more advantageous in some situations to use to take in your enemies, and also depending, or your allies. This also depends on kind of what region combinations you're running as well. Is it going to be easier to keep Tahm Kench alive? Maybe we include more, combat tricks or buffs that's going to help Tahm Kench stay alive, or pair him with Targon and give him Bastion so that you can't like Vengeance or obliterate him, right? And then we'll use more of an acquired taste. Whereas if we're using possibly a little bit different of a tactic and region combination, we'll be using more of the Bayou Brunch. Just a thought. One more thing to talk about this Tahm Kench kind of ability before we go on to his leveled up form here. He is creating an acquired taste in hand. It doesn't say it's fleeting, but you do get, I guess, card generation, which can turn into discard fodder. Because you're creating this 2-cost spell every round. This could work in a Piltover Zon deck, which is kind of interesting as well. So like from the looks of this, there's going to be a lot of ways to play Tahm Kench, which I like. He seems like he can be a very, very diversified champion that's going to be able to fit into a lot of decks. I don't know if they're all going to be necessarily, top tier or even a legitimate deck that's going to be able to climb in ranked, but from the looks of it, he'll at least fit in with them. So that's kind of cool. All right, leveled up Tahm Kench. Round start. Create and acquire taste in hand, so you're still going to be creating a card in hand, and then attack, obliterate my captured enemies, and release my allies. Alright, so each time you attack, so this is like an attack phase, I guess champion only, where you get his ability buff. So this could work with rallies if that's kind of your thing, but you do have to have enemies or enemies or allies in your. That's interesting. I don't know how that works. Anyway, you're going to have captured or enemy allies, I guess, consumed or captured, right? It says attack, obliterate my captured enemies, and release my allies. I might have to go back and look at the video, but I don't know if they attack with you on the board or if they go back kind of onto the bench, your allies. So that could be kind of interesting. But he gains the stats either way, and then releases them for the ability to block next round. So I kind of imagine that they'll just go to the bench. Alright, so yeah, interesting champion, interesting 4-drop. He doesn't have regeneration, so keep that in mind. So he's not going to be getting these stats back. You have to actually use Bayou Brunch if you want him to get more stats or other buffing spells like Take Heart and that sort of thing. Alright, this 6-drop over here is a rare. It's Wise Fry. It has Overwhelm. That's kind of interesting. But it's also vulnerable, it looks like. So play. Well, it's a 3/8, so that's interesting. Anyway, play deal 1 to all other allies and grant me +1 for each of them. So yeah, the most you can get really onto this unit is 5 extra attack damage. So think of this as kind of a different sort of what's that card called? The arena the crowd favorite. This is kind of like a crowd favorite where you get better stats depending on how many units are out already, right? So is this card better than crowd favorite? It kind of depends on the archetype that you're putting it in, right? Because like in a Swain deck or in a Vlad deck with Crimson units, this could be a really good card. Or with Braum, you could generate more Mighty Poros, that sort of thing. But it is vulnerable, and so it can be targeted. It also has Overwhelm, which makes it more like the crowd favorite. So yeah, the most it's going to get basically is an 8/8. I don't know that this is going to be included into Tahm Kench decks because Tahm Kench is going to be swallowing his allies, right? And so you're going to get less of a payoff if you use the Wise Fry when your allies are inside Tahm Kench or detained by Tahm Kench. So be kind of an interesting card. I don't know that this is going to get a lot of play in Tahm Kench decks. It might in other decks. It is a 6-drop though. which makes it kind of slow, and it's vulnerable, which definitely has a downside. So I don't see this card being particularly good. Could be wrong about that, but I kind of, yeah, it just doesn't seem super good. Alright, Shakedown. Burst speed, 1 cost spell here from Bilgewater. Deal 2 to an ally to grant 2 enemies vulnerable. Alright, this actually is pretty good, I think, in certain decks. So I'm thinking specifically a Swain deck. It doesn't say like grant the 2 weakest enemies, the 2 strongest enemies. You are granting 2 enemies, so you get to choose vulnerable. And this works really well in a Swain deck because 1, you're granting, you're helping him level up, and 2, you're allowing other units to pull in potentially big blockers so that Swain can get a clean hit onto the board. That's how I see this card initially being played here, which is pretty cool. Or any other unit really, that's big, like a Captain Farron or something, to be able to just hit the board unimpeded, which is pretty cool. So yeah, this helps to level up a Swain, a Vladimir. This could also be used on Braum, just to deal the damage onto Braum, I mean, and then as a burst speed option to get a Mighty Poro out, and then yeah, just determining where you want your units to attack and things like that. So that's pretty cool. This could potentially be used, I guess, in a scout deck. I could kind of, with Misfortune, I could kind of see that. Just she generally uses a lot of vulnerable abilities in her kind of deck list anyway, where you can determine which units you want to block into who, and you get her ability to take out some units. So yeah, this is a pretty interesting card. I see this getting a little bit of use here and there in specific decks. I don't think it's going to be an auto include in every deck, but I think in specific deck archetypes it will be used and will be very efficient in helping those decks and archetypes out. Alright. Yeah, overall, I'm pretty excited about Tahm Kench. He seems like a pretty cool champion. I definitely am going to try him out and see if we can get some good decks going for him, and try to see if we can. Well, we're probably going to be getting Soraka, who's going to have some healing aspects to help his followers, and Tahm Kench potentially, but he seems like he's a pretty diverse champion and is going to fit into a ton of decks, and those are the types of champions I like. Yeah, he could even fit in a Demacia deck because Demacia's got Detain. Yeah, pretty good. I'm pretty happy about him, pretty excited to try him out. So anyway, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, and we will see you tomorrow. Thanks.